What's up, guys? Today I want to talk about how chess can make our lives richer, healthier, and more fulfilled by cultivating one of the most important meta skills you can possibly develop, which is the ability to make better decisions. I'm doing a series on the book How Life Imitates Chess by Garry Kasparov, hence the banner. It's a great deep dive into the philosophy of how this game can improve your life and improve your character, improve your mind, and how the principles that you learn in this game and the strategies and tactics and everything translate directly into daily life, whether that's business, career, relationships, whatever. I built one of the most shared podcasts in the world over the last 6.5 years of coaching and teaching practical psychology. And I've learned that success in anything is really nothing more than consistently making the right decisions. Should I quit this job, date this person, start this business? Should I take the risk or play it safe, go all in or cut my losses? Should I trust my gut or think it through? And if so, how do I know that my method for arriving at these conclusions is even any good in the first place before I commit to them? Well, I'm here to tell you that chess will expose exactly how you think, and what it reveals might surprise you and be a little uncomfortable. But it doesn't just show us how we make decisions. It gives us a framework for improving the process itself. It gives us a model to follow, principles to anchor to, and enough self-awareness to figure out where we keep going wrong. So Kasparov describes chess as a flexible and adaptable model for decision making because on the board, bad thinking has nowhere to hide. People think chess is about crazy calculations, but actually no one can predict very much. When asked how many moves ahead he calculated, Grandmaster Jose Capablanca said, "I only see one move ahead, but it's always the correct one," which is funny, but there is some truth to that. It captures an aspect of chess that goes much deeper than just the game. So yes, you need long-term vision, but day-to-day life is generally decided by the ability to make the right move in the moment, whether it's in the game or in real life, on the chessboard, the boardroom, the bedroom, whatever. Tony Robbins says that the quality of your life is determined by the quality of your decisions, not your conditions. The problem is, bad decisions tend to make sense in the moment, and it's not until months or even years later that we start to realize otherwise. Just like how a move on the board might seem good, but it actually weakens our position, and we just don't notice it until the end game when everything falls apart. One of the great things about chess, though, is that it doesn't lie to you. Every bad decision shows up immediately, at least relative to the rest of our lives. So it doesn't let us get away with thinking we're doing good when we're actually being stupid, at least not for very long. Mistakes come to the surface, weak thinking gets punished, assumptions get exposed, and because feedback comes a lot faster than in most of life, growth can happen much faster too. More iterations means a shorter timeline for success. Plus, you can actually connect the dots and visually see how and why things aren't working and what could have been better, where things went wrong, and so on and so forth, which isn't a benefit that we typically have in normal everyday life. So playing chess can accelerate your personal development because it doesn't just train your intelligence, but also your judgment. How to avoid seductive but weakening moves, how to maneuver under pressure, how to improve your position before things go wrong, how to be less reactive and more calculating, which raises an interesting question. If the art of war applies to normal life, and chess is a distilled approximation for that philosophy, then how far can us ordinary people use the game of kings as a training ground for becoming the kind of person who plays to win? So in the book, How Life Imitates Chess, he talks about how he's setting up this business and he has this website. And they're trying to figure out how to make the website functional. They're trying to figure out how to make people click on the right things. And they've got these instructions in there, and they've got all the different buttons and the options that you can choose from, and the drop-down menu and everything. But what they're realizing when they go to look at the data is that people are not reading the instructions. They're clicking on the most eye-catching thing, and they'll click on the wrong thing. It takes them to the wrong place, and they get frustrated and give up pretty quickly, like maybe a click or two. And they're not even trying to figure out the process. They're just clicking on the most available, most eye-catching thing that grabs their attention. And that's generally how people make decisions in day-to-day life. They do it impulsively, emotionally, without reading the board, so to speak. And there's two reasons to think about this. One is so that you can understand other people, because anything that you're doing in life requires you to manage other people. It requires you to navigate the social hierarchies, the power structure, the communication obstacles that we're confronted with. And you have to understand, what is it that drives behavior? what is it that causes people to make a certain decision? So if you're trying to make a sale, if you're in business of some sort, you want people to buy from you. Well, you have to learn how to persuade them. You have to understand their psychology enough to pull the right levers so that the mechanism moves forward. You have to work with the machine that you have. And obviously, people are a little bit more complicated than machines, but at the same time, there are some very strong rules of psychology that we can apply. And so, when we're making decisions about like how are we going to have this conversation, what tone are we going to use, are we going to go on the attack, are we going to be defensive, are we going to counterattack, is it going to be cordial, or are we going to play nice, are we going to be aggressive, whatever it is, we have to think about the other person. We have to think about the audience that we're communicating to. If I need to have like the same conversation with my girlfriend versus my boss, obviously that's going to be different, right? But the thing is that people really don't change up their strategies, and when they do, it's usually more of like an intuitive thing. It's just like a gut reaction. It's something that they kind of just do instinctively, and they're not thinking through, well, why did I choose those words, that tone, that pace, that timing, whatever it is. So that's the first reason to understand how people make decisions, is so that you can have more influence in the world, so that you can get your way more often, which hopefully you do that in an ethical way, but it is what it is. The second part of that is understanding how you make decisions, because we like to think that we make the best choice that we have, but the thing is that we usually don't examine the criteria that we have for making decisions. Like if I'm playing a game of chess and I don't know what move to make, I can think about the principles of chess. And I can say, okay, well, I don't know what to do, so let's just find the least active piece and improve it. And that can help you out a lot, because maybe in the moment what was most important actually wasn't that piece activity, it was a positional thing. Maybe it was the idea of gaining space, or opening up the opponent's position. It could be any number of things, and maybe you were actually exposed to an attack that it was only a move or two away, or you're currently under attack, and so you can look back at that game and go, okay, I need a better process for figuring out like which principle to use at what time. I need a better checklist, or I need to refine how I think about these things. Maybe you don't have any principles at all, and you're just kind of guessing and trying to figure it out. And you realize, and that's how I got into chess, is because I was doing it basically just because I was bored. I was taking a break from social media, and I was like, I need something on my phone to look at so that I can like still get my fix. Screw it, I'll use chess. It's like, it's good for you. It's good for your mind. It'll help sharpen me up a little bit. And I was getting hit against the computer with these early queen attacks, and it was really irritating me. I was like, I actually don't know how to do this. I don't know how to think about the game at all. And so I started researching it, and I realized there's principles here. And I recognized those principles of strategy from business, from sales, from dealing with complicated social dynamics when there's a lot on the line. There's a lot of the stakes were high. It was complicated. People's emotions and egos were involved. The goals weren't always clear. The path to get there definitely was not. And so I recognized that, hey, the things that I've been learning over the course of my life that have started to solidify as I've hit the age of 30, and I'm a little bit more mature. Still got so far to go, and I'm still not anywhere near where I want to be. However, I see these perfectly reflected in the game. And so it makes sense that you can also, as you study your games and you learn, well, how do I think about things? Well, here I noticed that I made a blunder, and I got carried away because I was tunnel vision on something. To think, well, how often do I get tunnel vision in real life? Or here I was stressed out, I was under pressure, the clock was running down, and because of that, I reverted back to like my instinctive means of making decisions. What is that? Is it rational? Is it impulsive? There's a lot of food for thought there, and I'm not here to spoon feed you the answers. I'm trying to help you understand how to think about this, how to think about the game and your life, and how these things go together. I'm going to try to give you examples, but if I just give you all the answers, then that robs you of the real benefit, because half of the work half of the benefit to this is working it out for yourself. Just like as you struggle with your rating crashes and you try to figure out what exactly is it, well, finding the secret that was keeping you held back at that particular level is a reward in and of itself, and it means so much more to you when you figure it out and when you go through the process of development to get there, as opposed to someone just giving it to you. And I'm not saying that You shouldn't look for those answers. However, there's something that you can't escape about the process and about the journey. So remember that all battles are won or lost in the mind. So to understand the person sitting across from you, you first have to understand yourself. So how do we learn to read the situation, the board, the room, whatever it is? Well, here's a few tips. One is to evaluate the board without knowing whose turn it is. And this is an exercise that Kasparov advises in the book, where he's talking about how when you have puzzles and you know whose turn it is, you're looking for the next move. And that's not bad necessarily, but there's another element that you're missing here, which is that when you're just looking for like, how does white move forward? How do we progress? That's a little bit of a different like training tool than just looking at a position and not knowing whose move it is, not knowing what, how much time is left on the clock or anything like that, what the goal is, and just learning to understand what's there, learning to understand the position, learning to understand, what's actually in front of you. And when you do this in daily life, this can be, akin to taking a step back and trying to remove yourself from the situation. And it's easier said than done. And it sounds cliche, but the thing is that it's cliche for a reason, and people just don't do it. We don't take the time when we're in the heat of the moment to step back and go, well, what is this other person's point of view? Not to say that they're right, not to be like, oh, I'm just gonna, be wishy-washy and I think everybody's opinion is equally valid. Not really. I mean, like some people are really dumb, and some people are they're way too emotional about their position. And I'm not saying that you should use this to steamroll people. It's just to understand that maybe when you look at things objectively, when you remove your ego and you realize that, hey, there's people in authority, like if it's in your workplace, there's people in authority that have their ego involved. And it's not to moralize and say that it's right or wrong and say, well, I'm better than them. Like, you're probably not, just to be honest. It's just to understand what you're actually involved in. It's to understand the situation that's presenting itself to you, instead of thinking about, well, I have this point that I'm trying to make. I want my promotion, I want my raise, or I want my way, whatever it is. Instead of just looking at it that way, you learn to see the whole system. You learn to understand the wants and desires, the egos of other people, the viewpoints, the values and priorities that they have. Because for me, for example, I'm big on efficiency. And if things are being done wrong in a way that's sloppy and it's slowing us down, it's causing frustration, it's losing money, to me, like, that's priority. Like, let's fix that right now. But to a lot of people, the community is more important, and it's better, it's more desirable for them to have a work environment where everybody gets along and they're super, everybody's friends and we're close. And it's not to say one is better than the other. Each has its own strengths and weaknesses. It's just to understand that if you're going to operate in that specific job effectively without ruining your reputation and upsetting people and causing unnecessary friction and probably not getting your way and not having things go well for you, you need to understand more than just your attack. So I think that makes sense. But again, this all starts in your own mind. You have to look at, well, why did I decide to have that conversation? Why does this irritate me? And we can talk about relationships in the same way. Men and women sometimes don't get along. It's rare, but it does happen on occasion. Instead of just saying, well, I know that she's wrong about this, or I know that, he's only doing this because it's an emotional decision or whatever. Although it might be, more likely to have those roles reversed, but whatever. Instead of just looking at it like that, it's important to try to understand, well, who are they as a person? What are the values that they're raised on? What are the things that they've learned? And again, it's not to say that they're necessarily right, or that you're just going to use this to crush them, but it's to understand the position. It's to understand, you go into an argument thinking that you can get away with anything. You go into a negotiation thinking, oh, I have this in the bag, and you don't appreciate the fact that other people have certain values that you may be trampling on, or priorities that you may not be aligning with anymore. And at the end of the day, if you're trying to work out a business deal and it doesn't work out, that's okay. But at least you're making a rational, informed decision versus just powering through and blundering and losing the deal because you're short-sighted and emotional. Okay, so as you learn to review your games and you learn to analyze in real time how you make decisions, in the cold, hard light of day, when there's nowhere to hide, it's like, I made this move. Why? It was the wrong move. Instead of brushing past that, try to figure out, well, what prompted you to do that? Because if you can figure out what your thought process was, which you should be able to, a lot easier than you can in like a complicated emotional decision where you're having like a big argument with your family, like which of those is going to be easier to dissect and navigate without getting super emotional and attached to your perspective? Probably the board, right? So you learn to practice there and you realize, well, this is how I make decisions. Here's the strengths and weaknesses to that. Here's how I can offset the weaknesses and accentuate the strengths so that I can magnify the good qualities while reducing the risk at the same time. You start doing that and you start to become much more effective in all areas of life. And when you think about any kind of competition, and I don't want to reduce everything to a competition, but most of the things that you do, you probably want to win at, right? Like if you're in if you're at a job, you probably want to be the best you can. If you're starting a business, you want to make the most money that you can. If you're in a relationship, I'm not saying you're competing with the other person necessarily. I guess it depends on you two, whatever. I'm not here to judge, but you're at least wanting to be the best that you can in that. And so you have to be able to develop a way of thinking about your mistakes and your decisions and figuring out where those blind spots are and those shortcomings are so that you can start to remedy them. You can't predict everything that's going to come, but you can be prudent by diligently honing the skills that'll enable you to solve whatever problems do arise. So use your games to develop a real life decision making process based off of the fundamentals of tactics and strategy that you learn through playing. Like spend as much time as you can thinking about why people teach certain rules and principles about chess, and also try to figure out, well, how does this affect my daily life? If it works on the board, how can it work in the boardroom? How can it work in the bar when somebody gets in my face and tries to intimidate me? Like, how can I navigate that conversation, that confrontation, in a way that I can, de-escalate things and I can win without fighting? Sun Tzu says that's the highest form of warfare, is that you've mastered the board to the point where direct conflict isn't even necessary. And you can use the analogy of like a smothered checkmate. Like you don't take any pieces, you just get the knight in the right spot at the right time, and boom, you get a checkmate. Like like there's something so much more satisfying about that than like destroying somebody's pieces and taking everything they have and then checkmating them. I'm not saying that you don't want to do both here and there, and like it's definitely fun to do both, but there's just certain elegance and sophistication to doing it as artfully as possible, as precisely as possible. And I want you to start thinking about how that can become a philosophy that affects your entire life. And again, not saying that like you're at war with everyone all the time, just that there's a way of solving problems and approaching your life that is founded in logic, but also gives you room for creativity. It's founded in solid principles, so that when you do make mistakes, you can figure out why. Because if you look back at well, why did I date that person? It's like there's probably a lot of reasons why you dated that person that you shouldn't have, and you knew that it was a bad decision. But it's so complicated; it's hard to pick that apart. But if you look at a game, you can start to realize what your triggers are, what your shortfalls are, where you get distracted, where you get misled. And you can even realize things that aren't necessarily in the game, like emotional things that are in the game. Like if a girl's involved, there's probably like attraction. You probably don't have that to chess pieces. If you do, again, I'm not here to judge, but maybe you shouldn't play chess. I don't know. That might be the one person that probably shouldn't get involved in this. But yes, there's other factors involved. Life is more complicated, but when you've crossed everything else out and there's just like a couple gaps, then you can start to figure out, well, what are those gaps? And it's like, oh, I have a weakness for XYZ. The way that she presented herself, it seems like it was worth the risk, or maybe it was just pure stupidity, whatever it is. And you can come to terms with that and fix it. It's okay to make those mistakes, but you should be getting better. You should be looking for ways to not make those mistakes anymore. And with a system in place, with a hobby or a passion like chess that refines your decision-making process and teaches you how to think more clearly about things, you can get much further ahead in life than any of your peers. So use your games to develop that real-life decision-making process, again, based off of the fundamentals, because those fundamental principles are universal and they apply to any arena that you want to dominate. Thank you for listening. Have a good game.